In every city, there are two kinds of men: the one who chooses comfort and the one who chooses himself. Two men living in the same city followed completely different paths. One was married, one single. The married man had stability, his life organized, mapped, and measured by work, family, and expectations. Every choice was filtered through others. He wanted to take risks, to start something meaningful, but every step was weighed against potential disruption, the quiet fear of disapproval, and the cost of comfort. So he stayed. He stayed in the predictable, the safe, the acceptable. He never risked discomfort. He never tested his limits. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, he began to fade. Comfort became routine, and routine became a cage he barely noticed. He dreamed of starting a venture, exploring something new, breaking the pattern. But fear of disruption, disapproval, and responsibility held him back. On the other side, the single man had nothing but choice. His mornings were unpredictable. His decisions were his own. His failures were immediate and unshielded. He could leave the city at a moment's notice, invest in a risky idea, or pursue a passion that might consume him entirely. Solitude demanded confrontation with himself. Every fear, flaw, and desire surfaced. Jung called this individuation, the deliberate facing of the unconscious. Nietzsche called it dangerous, the kind of danger that produces a man who is independent, unbreakable, and alive. Society praises the married man for stability, applauds his safety, and labels his life responsible. But few notice the single man. Few realize that in his solitude, he faces a harsher reality, confronts the truth of his own mind, and builds a strength the married man cannot touch. Being single is not loneliness. It is confrontation. It is refusing to let life belong partially to someone else. It is responsibility, risk, and freedom colliding at once. And in that confrontation, the single man becomes complete. The married man avoided risk, and in avoiding risk, he avoided himself. Security became stagnation. Predictability became invisibility. But the single man embraced risk, and in doing so, discovered mastery. Each failure became a lesson. Each success, a proof of autonomy. Every action and every decision was calibrated by his own values, not by compromise, not by expectation. That is freedom. That is life lived fully. The single man didn't choose solitude because life pushed him there. He chose it because he sensed something most men never learn. You cannot build a self if your life is constantly entangled with the expectations of others. Jung once wrote that most people never meet themselves because they are too busy being what the world expects. You see this in the married man. He wasn't weak. He simply lived in a life where every decision echoed through someone else's emotions. So he suppressed the darker questions, the uncomfortable ambitions, the dreams that didn't fit. He became a character in a story he didn't write. The single man had no such shield. His solitude forced him into what Jung called the encounter with the shadow. The parts of himself he avoided, denied, or buried. There was no one to distract him from the truth. No noise, no excuses, just him and the raw honesty he could no longer escape. On quiet nights, he confronted fears the married man never had time to notice. His insecurity, his ambition, his jealousy, his hunger for meaning. And slowly, through trial, error, and failure, he began shaping those forces into strength. Jung believed that a man who integrates his shadow becomes unshakable. That is exactly what solitude demanded of him. Nietzsche saw the journey differently, but landed at the same truth. He believed the moment a man breaks away from the herd, he enters danger. The danger of thinking for himself, of building his own values, of ripping away the comforting illusions society hands him. The married man lived inside those illusions: safety, respectability, predictability. But Nietzsche warned that these comforts come at a silent cost: the death of one's will. The single man lived with no such safety net. He had to create meaning instead of inheriting it. He had to build purpose instead of being assigned it. His life demanded what Nietzsche called the path of the creator, a man who does not live according to the noise around him, but the voice within him. And the more he walked that path, the more he realized something profound. Most men lose themselves because they fear being alone. But the man who embraces solitude discovers himself. That is the difference Jung and Nietzsche saw. Not marriage versus singleness, not romance versus independence, but the deeper divide: a man who hides from himself and a man who confronts himself. One grows smaller, the other grows larger, and the world treats them accordingly. Round 403 BC, there lived a man named Diogenes, a man who rejected everything his society worshipped. While everyone chased status, wealth, reputation, and approval, he chose nothing. No house, no family, no possessions, just a barrel, a cloak, and a mind no one could control. People mocked him, pointed at him, whispered that he was insane. But what they never understood was this: Diogenes wasn't poor. He was free. He owned nothing because he refused to be owned. He lived alone because he was chasing the only thing that truly matters: a self that belongs to no one else. One day, Alexander the Great, the most powerful man alive, approached him. Soldiers, advisors, the entire city watched. Alexander said, "Ask me for anything." The world expected Diogenes to kneel, to flatter, to beg for a position or privilege. Instead, Diogenes looked up from the sunlight and said only, "Yes, step aside. You're blocking my sun." That single moment reveals a truth people still deny today. A man who needs nothing cannot be controlled by anything. Diogenes believed that most men are not living, they are performing. Performing for approval, performing for their partners, performing for society, performing for a life they secretly resent. He said the world is full of men who trade freedom for comfort and call it happiness. But inside, they are suffocating. Now think back to our two men, the married one and the single one. The married man lives respectably. People admire him, applaud him, celebrate his stability. But like the men of ancient Athens, he is trapped in expectations he didn't choose. He has a life, but none of it is truly his. Meanwhile, the single man walks alone, criticized, misunderstood, underestimated. But like Diogenes, he answers to nothing but his own mind. His time is his. His energy is his. His ambition is not filtered through obligation. And in that solitude, he becomes dangerous because he is shaping himself without permission. Diogenes believed that a man who dares to walk alone confronts the truth of his instincts, his weaknesses, his desires. He strips away the illusions society forces on him. He becomes sharp, awake, uncompromised. That is why the world fears the single man more than the married one. The married man follows the path. The single man creates one. Diogenes would say, most men fear walking alone, but the greatest danger is never meeting yourself. And that is the silent advantage the single man holds. He faces truth early while others avoid it forever. As the years passed, The difference between the two men didn't appear suddenly. It revealed itself slowly in small moments, the kind most people overlook. The married man didn't collapse. He didn't fail. He simply plateaued. His days became predictable, his reactions rehearsed, his ambitions politely postponed. Every new idea was met with a quiet voice inside him saying, "Be careful, don't disturb what you've built." And so he didn't. He told himself he would try one day. But one day is the lie comfort tells a man right before it steals the rest of his life. Meanwhile, the single man moved differently. Not recklessly, intentionally. He lived with a kind of clarity that comes only from knowing no one else will save you. His failures were sharp and public. His wins were his alone. But each step, each risk, each confrontation sharpened him. He became the kind of man Jung described, a man who forges himself through the painful dialogue with his own inner world. His solitude wasn't emptiness. It was a forge, a place where discipline replaced distraction, where purpose replaced approval, where self-respect replaced dependence. And Nietzsche would say that this is the moment a man becomes dangerous, not to others, but to the version of himself that once lived small. He began to wake early, not because a schedule told him to, but because a fire inside him refused to rest. When he worked with an intensity the married man could no longer access, not because he was better, but because he was free. His time was his own. His energy was his own. His ambitions were unfiltered by anyone else's fear. While the married man negotiated every hour of his life with the needs around him, the single man negotiated only with his future self, the one he was building in silence. The difference grew quietly at first. A new skill learned, a habit strengthened, a risk taken that paid off. But these quiet advantages compound, and soon the gap between them was no longer invisible. One man's world grew narrower. The other man's world expanded. And although society praised the married man for stability, they began to notice the single man for something far rarer: presence, confidence, a depth that cannot be faked. Because when a man spends years alone with his thoughts, he develops a kind of self-possession that no title, no relationship, and no approval can ever give. The married man sought safety. The single man sought mastery. And mastery, once found, changes everything. Carl Jung once said that the greatest task of a man is to become what he truly is, not what the world expects him to be. The single man understands this early. He knows that no approval, no comfort, and no tradition can substitute for self-mastery. Nietzsche, in his own way, echoed the same truth. "Become who you are," he wrote, warning that the man who follows others' paths sacrifices the fire within. Together, their insight is undeniable. The single man chooses himself, even when the world whispers otherwise. He walks alone because he knows that only in solitude can a man discover the full scope of his own will. Each decision he makes, each risk he takes, each moment of discomfort becomes a testament to autonomy. The married man measures his life by comfort, reputation, and social approval. The single man measures his life by clarity, courage, and the ability to act without restraint. He creates his own values, his own schedule, his own purpose. Nietzsche called this the creation of self as art. Jung saw the fulfillment that comes from living authentically. In solitude, the single man experiences both. He builds himself while the world passes by, often unaware, sometimes jealous, sometimes dismissive. The married man, meanwhile, continues along the path society laid before him. His life is orderly, applauded, secure. Yet security carries a hidden cost. It dulls the senses, constrains ambition, and quiets the fire of self-realization. He may earn respect, he may earn comfort, but he is quietly, slowly, trading the infinite possibilities of his life for a mapped, predictable existence. The single man thrives in the friction of uncertainty. He welcomes discomfort, embraces unpredictability, and confronts the raw truth of life head-on. Each challenge becomes an instrument, sharpening his mind, his body, his character. He is not reckless. He is deliberate, intentional, and awake. Jung and Nietzsche both recognize that a man who walks alone develops a rare kind of strength. Jung spoke of the rewards of authenticity, of living without compromise. Nietzsche spoke of the dangers of the herd and the necessity of forging one's own path. The single man embodies both philosophies. He learns to create meaning where none is given, to act where others hesitate, and to live where others settle. His failures do not break him. They educate him. His victories do not define him. They reflect his mastery over himself. This is why the world reacts differently to the single man. Some admire him, some envy him, and some fear him without realizing why. There is a subtle danger in a man who answers to no one, who owes nothing to anyone, and whose life is calibrated entirely to his own values. The married man may have influence, status, and stability, but he is tethered. The single man is free, unbound, and alive in a way the married man cannot be. He is not isolated. He is amplified. To be single is not to be lonely. It is to be fully present. It is to take responsibility for every thought, every action, every choice. It is to confront the deepest truths of your own mind and emerge sharper, stronger, and more complete. It is dangerous because it demands honesty, courage, and unflinching self-reflection. It is necessary because only through such confrontation does a man truly rise. And here is the final truth Jung and Nietzsche would both endorse. The single man does not wait for life to happen. He creates it. He shapes it. He masters it. Every moment is his own, every decision his own, and every lesson a brick in the foundation of his independence. If you resonate with this, if you feel the call to examine your own life, to question the compromises you make, and to consider the power of solitude, then continue walking this path. Follow the ideas, the stories, and the insights that challenge the herd, because it is only there, in the thinking, in the reflection, and in the choice to live deliberately, that life begins. And if you want to keep exploring these truths together, to question, to challenge, and to grow alongside a voice that dissects a life without compromise, subscribe. Not for entertainment, not for distraction, but to sharpen your mind, confront your reality, and see the world with clarity few dare to seek.